All right, listen up, y'all.
Greetings, everybody. This is your host and educator, Mr. Abdullah, giving you another episode of All Things Education Official. Please take your time to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Once again, like, comment, subscribe, and share. It adds us to the algorithm, gets the message out, because I'm giving education from a foundational Black American male's perspective. Today, we're going to talk about why your child may be failing, why or why not, and the current grading scale.
We've talked about efforts in schools to make grading more equitable. Now, some places are going a step further and changing their grading scale. Education experts say the traditional 0 to 100 grading scale is mathematically allocated toward failure. If a student knows the work but gets just 1 0 on an assignment, they still risk failing. So some districts are moving to a 50-point scale, or what some education experts see as a more equitable scale, like the 0 to 4 system, which is the same way GPAs are determined.
And what you've done then is, if you had a B, B, and an F, a 3, 3, and a 0, the average is like a 2 point something, so which is a C minus, which is what we would want it to be.
I initially wanted to chop up the news clip that we just watched to discuss the grading scales, how they're changing them. But I recognized that in that one clip, it had a lot of information discussing the teacher's perspective as well as the student's perspective. It goes into discuss about how different varying groups, underserved, groups of color, Black children, in particular from my perspective, how they may be underserved by the current grading scale. But I'd like to say that there are tons of reasons why your children may or may not be doing well in school. So let's get right into that. We're going to deal with what we consider to be the actual factual as it pertains to why grades are low. According to schoolforchampions.com, in an article entitled Reasons Students Get Poor Grades, they go straight to the basics. They don't really hem and haw around it. They get straight to why your child may not be doing well. First things first, the subject matter is too difficult. It says it is possible that you took a course where the subject matter was too difficult for you to understand. And a lot of times that may happen when a child goes into a class and they weren't prepared the year or the 2 years prior. The teachers aren't very good. Says teachers not very good. And we know this happens. Just because you want to teach doesn't mean you can. Difficult study environment. If you have siblings, very chaotic households, there's no space for them to go over their work, or they themselves create a chaotic environment. They got the TV on, the radio on, the music on. Sometimes that definitely hands to them not being as applied in the academics as possible. They have poor attitudes that lead to poor grades, such as lack of motivation. Some children just don't feel connected to the work, so they don't give it their all. They didn't do their homework. A lot of times kids feel like, hey, I left school, I'm done. This is over with. What you talking about? It's K's, I'm out of here. It's not the case. The homework, even though there have been different studies that say that homework itself doesn't benefit, they say reading does. As long as the system still stands, your child is still responsible for that homework, and they may just not do it, and that definitely affects their grades. They may have goofed off, and I can tell you, I have had so many students that have said to me, Mr. Abdullah, I went home and I got on the game and my girl came, I was on group chat, I was on Snapchat, I was chopping it up, and they just don't get to the work because by the time they decide that maybe they should do it, they've already decided I'm going to come up with a good excuse not to do it. So they goofed off. Now they have miscellaneous poor attitudes. These are something that you need to really consider. They may want to punish their parents. I mean, maybe, sometimes the best way to get back at your parent is to not do what they want you to do. They have a fear of success because they know with those accolades comes expectations. They don't like the subject. That happens a lot. Oftentimes I find it happens in your core content areas, English language arts, math, and science. Some kids honestly just don't like school. It says here, they just don't like school. They don't want to be there. They'd rather be doing something like on the game, sleep, out with their friends, at the park. Who knows, but they just don't want to do schoolwork. Also, they're bored. I like to say this, particularly for Black American children, many of us are hyper intellectual. We get through the work. Once we get it, we got it, and we're ready to move on. But based on curriculum, timelines, and agendas, we've got to go along with what the teacher's telling us. A lot of teachers don't want you to skip ahead because guess what? Unfortunately, they're not good teachers and it gives them more work to do. Personal issues. We're talking about some of the more intense things, homelessness. We have kids that just don't have enough clean clothes. They're not eating properly. They have chaos going on between the parents. Maybe they're not even living with parents. Maybe they're ward to the state. So personal issues can definitely affect your students' grades. They might have a problem taking tests. Now, that's something I discussed in a previous video about standardized testing. Some children just have test anxiety. Some adults have it, but a lot of children have it as well, and they cannot stand those tests. So those are some of the things that you really need to consider when your child brings home poor grades. So instead of saying, why are your grades so low? What are you doing in school? Go over the list. Try to figure out where your child fits in there, because most likely your child fits in some part of that criteria. Now, what we are seeing now is as you saw in the video, there is a shift in grading. And as educators, we are so appalled by it, because now we have students who literally do nothing and they're given a 50% grade. That's the lowest grade they can be given, is a 50%. And as an educator myself, and as an older educator, I cannot fathom how you're going to socialize this. And it's not culturally portable. You cannot expect people to change the criteria of life because you're not meeting it. And that's what ultimately it begins to be. Children are now being told, if you can't cut it, we're going to change the criteria so that you can cut it. That's not a good foreboding for the future. It says here under specialconnections.ku.edu, which is Kansas State, changing the grading scale. It says criteria, points, or percentages for earning a specific letter grade is changed to make it more likely that a student will earn a higher grade. It may allow a student who is working at full potential to earn a higher grade than would otherwise be possible. This can't last. This does not have longevity. If you're telling children that they're doing no work, but they still get a 50, well, it only stands to reason if you tell a child they're doing just a little bit of work and they have a C or a B, that's okay. And you start to give them a false sense of reality. I don't believe in it. Though my school does have that grading policy, I am quick to remind the young men in my mentorship program that are part of the school, I want to see an actual A, an actual B, not some of this, we're going to give you a participation trophy grading. So what I do is I require them to have the top of the scale of that A or B. If you have an 80%, well, in all actuality, you got probably a C minus. If you have a 90%, well, you might have a C plus, B minus. So I'm requiring the students that I check their grades and I give them encouragement to be better than who they were yesterday. I say you've got to be at the top of your scale, because people are giving you allowances that do not work in the future and do not work in your real life. This is Mr. Abdullah. Well, thank you for participating and listening to another episode of All Things Education Official. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And just remember, we care about our children and we want to give them the best. And sometimes that means a little tough love. You are dismissed.
Yeah! You are all expurgated. You are dismissed.